Welcome back, y'all. This week we've got UFC Vegas 107 coming up, but let's start with a recap and a little bit of a clarification. On these graphs in the intro, the numbers on the left are a percentage of our starting bankroll. So this week, our bankroll is 244.5% what it was when we first started this project. Also, 1 unit is always 1% of our bankroll, so it does vary week to week. Now that that's out of the way, let's have a look at what happened last week. We did get our monthly bonus for May, but these things are just tiny now. We haven't been losing enough, and so that comes in at only about 0.4 of a unit for us. Then on Saturday, we had LFA 209. I had originally thought that we had won 2.45 units, but after checking the book, I realized that some of the lines changed while I was placing my bets. And so I ended up losing a little bit more on the main event than I thought, and we ended up the night only up 1.75 units. I would have liked a little more profit here, but a win is a win, and we still haven't taken a loss on an LFA card yet. All right, let's jump right into UFC Fight Night, Blanchfield versus Barber. We'll be opening the night in the women's strawweight division with a matchup between Rayanne dos Santos and Alice Ardeline. Rayanne is the younger fighter by 4 years in this matchup, but you can also see that she's got a significant amount more experience. She's been away from the sport for nearly a year, but Alice has also been away for over 200 days. Santos is a minus 260 favorite at the books, and V1 is very much in line with that, while V2 is leaning just barely Alice's way. If you look down at the bottom, I've added some new information for you down here, and these are the weights that are attributed to the different features in the model. So time-based things like age and time in between fights make up roughly 37.5% of the model's decision. Meanwhile, attributes like height, reach, and weight make up 29.7% of the model's decisions. This will be different for every weight class, as that's how the models are run. You can use these percentages to modify your own expected outcome. So if you think Rayanne's experience makes up more than 33%, then you may want to bet on her in this matchup. I plan to make these percentage breakdowns a little more granular in the future. Even though V2 is only giving Alice a 0.04% edge here, we are still going to be betting her for 1 unit. Next, we'll be looking at a lightweight matchup between Balaji Oki and Markel Medeiros. You can already tell that time-based metrics matter a lot more in this weight class, whereas attributes such as height and reach mean a lot less. These two guys are very similar in age and height, but Balaji Oki's got a pretty substantial reach advantage of 3.5 inches. Markel Medeiros is making a pretty quick turn of only 63 days, coming off of a split decision win. V1 and V2 of the models are split on this fight, and again, V2 is just very slightly giving the edge, this time 0.05%. It is in favor of Balaji Oki, who's a minus 170 favorite at the books, so we will be placing 1.7 units on Oki to return 1 unit with a win. We'll be staying at lightweight for a fight between Kurt Holobaugh and Jordan Levitt. You can see that none of the weights down at the bottom changed, and this is because 155 will continue to predict the same until more fights are added. So you should expect small changes from card to card, but on the same card, these will be consistent within each division. With time-based metrics being such a big factor at lightweight, we should expect that Kurt being 9 years older and having only a 77-day turnaround will have a big effect on V2 of the model. It seems to have a pretty big effect on the books also. He's a plus 155 underdog with the comeback on Jordan Levitt at minus 180. V1 and V2 are in agreement on this one, with V2 relatively confident at 58.28%. Because the two versions of the model agree on the outcome of this fight, we will be betting enough to return 1.5 units, which is a risk of 2.69 units. Our next matchup between Andreas Gustafsson and Trevin Giles is a catchweight bout at 180 pounds. This one's a little strange. All of the weights at the bottom come from middleweight, even though both of these guys are welterweights. This happened because the current and best welterweight model I have does not include fights above 170 pounds for training data, and therefore cannot be tested on fights above 170 pounds, where the middleweight model does include 180-pound fights. It looks like this is being contested at a catchweight because Trevin Giles took this fight on late notice. He's currently on a 3-fight losing streak where he was stopped in 2 of those 3. Gustafsson is riding a 3-fight winning streak. He's earned a KO TKO in all 3 of those without ever seeing a 3rd round. You can see from the weights at the bottom that at middleweight, the model puts a lot of stock into records. This not only includes wins and losses, but also methods of victory. Gustafsson is making his UFC debut, so if you think that finishes outside of major organizations mean less, adjust appropriately. Despite being new to the organization, the books still have Gustafsson as a -165 favorite. V1 and V2 do not agree here, but V2 is right in line with the books at 58.5%. We'll be putting 1.65 units on Gustafsson to win this fight. Moving on to a women's bantamweight matchup between Macy Chiasson and Ketlin Vieira. Macy has the advantage in both height and reach, which the model weights fairly heavily at almost 23%. This is the 3rd time that they've been scheduled to fight each other, each of them pulling out once, with Macy pulling out in February, leading to both of them having significant layoffs before this fight. At the books, this fight is very close to a pick'em, with Macy being slightly favored at -115. The 2 models don't agree here, but V2 is quite strong on Macy at just over 60%. As always, we'll be following V2 and putting 1.15 units on Chiasson. The only men's flyweight fight on this card is a bout between Alan Nascimento and Rafael Filo. Time is a massive factor in this weight class, and Nascimento hasn't fought in 868 days. He's had 4 canceled bouts since his last outing, and he's withdrawn from 3 of them. Looking at his record, canceled bouts doesn't seem to be anything new for him. Since the end of 2012, he's had 19 canceled bouts and 19 actual fights. These 2 were originally scheduled to fight in August of last year, and Nascimento pulled out due to illness. It is interesting to note that he was a -210 favorite for that bout, and that has since dropped to -170 at the books. Both versions of the model think that Filo has an edge here as a +145 underdog, so we will be placing 1.5 units on Rafael Filo. Our next matchup is at middleweight between Dusko Todorovic and Zach Reese. These 2 guys rarely see a decision, and the model at middleweight puts a lot of stake in finishes. As you can see from the graphs up top, these guys' percentages for knockouts, subs, and decision wins are nearly identical, with both of them also almost always losing by KO. This model cares very little about the height and reach advantage that Reese comes into the fight with, but 3 inches in both could be very substantial in this fight. At the books, Zach is a -232 favorite, and both versions of the model favor him quite a bit. It's going to cost us 3.47 units on Zach Reese to return 1.5 units in profit. We've got a single welterweight matchup on this card, and it'll be a matchup between Ramiz Brahimaj and Billy Ray Goff. Both of these guys were originally scheduled against different opponents on this card, but with each of those guys having visa issues, these guys got rescheduled to fight each other. A quick glance at these records indicate that we're looking at a striker versus grappler matchup, And then a quick glance at the odds indicate that Billy Ray Goff shouldn't have too much trouble keeping this fight on the feet. He's a minus 340 favorite at the books, and both versions of the model are giving him a substantial chance of winning this fight. We'll be risking 5.09 units on Billy Ray Goff to win this bout. Moving up to light heavyweight for the next bout between Bruno Lopez and Dustin Jacoby. Up until now, this card has been chock full of absolute killers with just incredible finishing rates. But I have to say that now because the last two fights on this card aren't nearly as good as the rest of it's been. Looking at the percentages down at the bottom, I'm surprised that at light heavyweight, age has as big of an effect as it does on the prediction from the model. I believe that the 5-year age difference here is swaying the model pretty handily in Bruno's favor, but it's also important to look at the percentage for record and realize that Bruno's win percentage is significantly higher than Dustin's. I can certainly see how the odds makers have Dustin at a minus 188, given that 37 is not old for light heavyweight, and Bruno Lopez is 14-1, but he only has a single fight in the UFC. Regardless, both versions of the model are very heavy on Bruno to win this fight, so I will be taking him as a plus 156 underdog for 1.5 units. In our co-main event, we've got a lightweight matchup between Ludovic Klein and Mateusz Gamrot. These two have very similar records and have both seen a lot of decisions as of late. The big difference here is that Ludovic is on a 7-fight unbeaten streak with a single draw mixed in there, while Mateusz has lost 2 of his last 5 fights, including his last outing against Dan Hooker. Klein will be giving up a few inches in height, but he seems to be getting that back in reach, although the model doesn't seem to care about that too much. It looks like the big difference here for the model is the 4-year age gap, along with the recent losses of Gamrot. At the books, Ludovic is a plus 140 underdog, but the models see him as a small favorite. Since both models like Klein to win this fight, we will be placing a 1.5 unit bet on him. Finally, the main event on this card will be a flyweight matchup between Macy Barber and Erin Blanchfield. These ladies have very similar records. They're very similar in age and height. Blanchfield will have a 3-inch reach advantage, but at only 12.5%, that doesn't seem to make a big difference in this. The only metric I see that could be swaying the models is that Macy has been away for nearly 450 days. Macy is currently riding a 7-fight win streak, and as a plus 190 underdog, I think she may be a good value play here. Despite that, I'm a slave to the models, and both of them agree that Blanchfield is more likely to win this fight. So as a minus 225 favorite, we will be placing 3.37 units on Erin to return 1.5 units with a win. Now that we've covered all the fights, let's have a look at the totals for this card. There are 11 fights at this event, and we were able to make predictions on every single one of them. V2 of the model predicted 7 of the favorites to win and 4 of the underdogs. V1 agrees on 4 of those favorites and 3 of the underdogs. Our total risk came out to 24.62 units with a potential profit of 17.79 units or a 72.26% ROI. The model's predictions for any other fight promotion are shared over on Patreon. There won't be any this week, but go sign up if you'd like to see those in the future. That's all I've got for now. Thanks for watching and good luck on all your bets this weekend.